All right, folks, it's finally time to learn a new tune here in our new spot. I hope you've been enjoying the past few videos from our new house here in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. We're finally starting to unpack and get all the rooms sorted, and it's been so nice having this studio space just dedicated to filming, to recording, and to practicing. That's our dog, Finn, by the way. His timing is perfect, I think. You done, Finn? You know, up until we got this house, I really haven't had a permanent address for the past couple of years, and all my stuff has been in boxes, so it's been so much fun going through all that stuff, unpacking these books that you see here on the shelves, and going through a lot of old music that I'd forgotten about. Which got me thinking about this old fiddle tune Daley's Reel that we're gonna look at in today's lesson. Here, take a listen and see what you think. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the first fiddle tune that I can remember learning in the key of B flat major, which is kind of a daunting key to play on the mandolin, right? And unfortunately, B flat major is kind of a common jam repertoire key. There's a lot of singing songs that are put in B flat to suit high tenor vocals, and there's the odd fiddle tune like Daley's Reel. And if you're new to the key of B flat on the mandolin, one of the best things that you can do is just learn a great melody like Daley's Reel. That's gonna give you a lot more vocabulary to draw from, but we're not gonna stop there. In this video, we're gonna check out the B flat major scale. I'm also gonna show you some really cool embellishment exercises that you can use in this key center, and any key center for that matter. And then we're gonna take this same melody and figure out how to play it way up the neck, so that way you're mapping out some options anywhere you find yourself on the fretboard. So, when you're ready, let's grab your mandolin and let's check this out. All right, so before we get started, if you've never heard this tune before, go ahead and do yourself a favor and listen to the Kenny Baker version off of the Master Fiddler record. There's another great recorded version of this tune by fiddler Joe Green on his Fiddle album here, and I think it's partly because of the popular influence of fiddlers like Kenny and Joe that this tune has gotten a lot more traction in American bluegrass jam circles. Kind of a fun note about the origin of this tune, though, is that in Joe Green's LP liner notes here for the Fiddle album, he says that this tune is Canadian in origin. Canada's got all the good ones. But honestly, I think I first heard this tune on that bluegrass guitar record from Brian Sutton, which is one of my favorite albums. You got Tim O'Brien just playing some awesome mandolin on there, and Tim Crouch is absolutely slaying the fiddle part. Go check it out if you want to. I've got links to all these recordings here in the description below. All right, but enough talk here. Let's get to playing some mandolin. And to start off, let's learn the chords to this song. Let me show you a few open chords to start with that might help here. For your open B flat chord shape, I like to use this shape here. Next up in the song, we have an F major chord, so here's a shape for your F major chord as well. And lastly, we have that E flat chord, right? Check this shape out. And then of course, if you are playing this in that bluegrass jam, you gotta learn the chop chord shapes as well, which I think are actually a little bit easier in some respects. We have our 4-finger chop chord for B flat way up here. And the next two are a piece of cake, right? Here's your F chop chord. Your E flat chord is just 2 frets lower with the same fingerings and the same spacings. Then of course you want to practice using these shapes, chopping on the backbeat like we do at the big bluegrass jam here. Also, really quickly, let me show you this chord progression and let me show you the structure of the song, because even though this is in the tough key of B flat major, Daley's Reel has a pretty standard structure, right? We just have 2 sections, an A section and a B section. They're both 8 measures long with repeats. That's so straight ahead. And the chord progression here is pretty simple. Check it out. To start off on the A section, we have 2 measures of your B flat chord, followed by 2 measures of your F chord. Then on the next line, we go back to B flat for 2 measures. Then we just have 1 measure of F, before getting back to B flat at the end of the section. That whole A section repeats, and then we head over to the B section next, where we're starting off with an E flat major chord. We have 2 measures of E flat before coming back to B flat for 2 measures. Then we have a little bit of a quicker chord progression here. Here we have 1 measure of F, 1 measure of B flat. And then same thing again, 1 measure of F, 1 measure of B flat. And that's the whole song. We just have to go learn the melody now. All right, and since this is such a new territory, before we tackle this melody, let's see if we can get our fingers around this B flat major scale first. I always like to think about a scale as basically a group of notes that I have to choose from when playing a song. So by knowing the B flat major scale ahead of time, it's actually gonna make it easier for you to learn this melody for Daley's Reel. Basically, you're eliminating all the notes in between the cracks of the scale, so you don't have to worry about those. So let's try this out. Here's the B flat major scale in the first position. So a couple things to note about this scale. First, our key signature has 2 flats, which are B flat and E flat. And the real pesky one on the mandolin is that E flat note, right? Which means we can't use our open E string. Instead, we're gonna have to play our E flat note on the 6th fret of the A string. So as you get into the higher registers of this scale on the A and the E string, it's gonna feel like you're playing in a closed position, which is hard in and of itself because you're having to use that dreaded 4th finger, but also hard because as you go back down the scale, you're gonna start using open strings, which feels kind of strange transitioning from playing closed position to playing an open position. But those are the cards that we were just dealt here in the key of B flat on the mandolin. It's just something we have to get used to. So the second thing about this scale that you may have noticed is the way that I was playing it earlier. I started here on the root, the B flat note on the 3rd fret of the G string, and I walked up to the highest note I could reach in the first position, which just so happens to be a B flat as well. And then I walked my way back down, but instead of stopping on the B flat here on the 3rd fret again, I also played the A and the G before walking back up to the B flat to end it. And I do this for a couple of reasons. First is if you add those extra notes in, this exercise ends up being a complete 4 measure exercise that you can repeat as many times as you want to without feeling a weird number of beats. And secondly, I think about scales more as a position rather than a linear device. Like I said, I want it to be a pool of notes that I have to choose from playing a song. And if I leave those notes out, I feel like I get an incomplete picture of what I have available to me in this position. So just for completionist's sake, I also like to add those notes in. So again, if this key is new to you, try to spend some time getting familiar with this shape and this structure before moving on to the melody, because we'll want to view the melody in light of this framework. All right, well, on to the juicy part now, right? We're gonna learn this melody 1 phrase at a time. And as we dive into this melody together, if you want a PDF copy of the tablature and notation transcription that you see here on screen, you can grab it over at the Patreon link here in the cards above. You can also grab the MP3 backing tracks that you're hearing if you want an extra practice tool as you continue to learn this piece. But let's check out this A section now. This melody, like a lot of other melodies out there, kind of breaks down into 2 measure phrases. So here's the first phrase of this melody. So the first phrase is very centered around the root here on our 1st fret of our A string. This is a B flat note, and you can kind of keep your first finger rooted on this root for a little while as we play through this phrase. No pun intended. Just watch out, we use that dreaded pinky on the 6th fret for your E flat in the 2nd measure there. The next 2 measure phrase is around an F major chord, and we're playing a lot of notes that happen on your F major arpeggio, right? We're starting out with an A, then a C, F down here, E flat on the 1st fret. And then for the next measure, we're playing kind of this 3rd-based scale pattern, you could call it. Playing from the 3 to the open, 5 to the 1, and then 6 back down, ending up on the B flat for the next phrase. And as we get to the 2nd line, phrase number 3, these 2 measures here are exactly the same as our first 2 measures, so piece of cake, right? Then the last phrase, some people call that the turnaround phrase, the last two measures of a section like this. We start out very similarly to phrase number 2. Remember when we were playing over that F major chord? It just ends a little bit differently. Watch out for this. And here we encounter one of the first pull-off triplets that we've looked at here on the channel. This is actually kind of a tricky embellishment. What I'm doing here is I'm pulling off for the first 2 notes of the triplet on a downstroke, and I'm almost pulling more down towards the ground to re-pluck that string with my middle finger to make that first fret ring out a little bit more. Then I'm coming up on the A string for the 3rd note of that triplet before resolving with another downstroke on the root here. So altogether it should sound something like this. It's pretty tricky. But we're gonna look at some more exercises that will help with this later on in this lesson. So for now, just try to get your fingers around that. Try to get used to alternating your right hand in the same fashion as we were earlier. We're just adding in that extra note with the pull off. But that's it, right? That's the A section for the tune. Let's see if we can play through this once together with the backing track and the transcription on screen. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now let's tackle the B section, right? Here's the first 2 measure phrase of our B section. And this might be the hardest melodic section of the entire tune, right? Because we have a lot of that closed position pinky action on the 6th fret. So using the pinky both on the 6th fret of the E string and the A string. Basically, that whole mess is just an E flat arpeggio, if that helps keep all those notes straight. But coming up next, we have another pull-off triplet. Now we're pulling off from the 3rd fret on the D string, pulling off to the 1st fret on the D string, up on the D, and then resolving back to the 1st fret. And lastly, here in this phrase, we have this really quick grace note slide from the 5th to the 6th fret on our A string. I think probably the best fingering for this is to use your pinky. And we don't usually use our pinky for slides, but this is a tough tune in the key of B flat, so we're gonna pull out all the stops here for our 4th finger. Next phrase sounds like this. So here we are gonna break the rules of our key and play an E natural, which doesn't fit with our scale or key signature, but it does work as a chromatic leading tone to get us to this F note, which is a chord tone for our B flat chord, which is being played right now. But from that point on, we're kind of playing a B flat arpeggio and landing on chord tones at really important parts of the measure. Then for the 2nd measure of this phrase, we have a hammer-on triplet there at the end, which is basically the inverse of your pull-off triplet, right? We're hammering on for the first 2 notes on a downstroke. Then we're grabbing the 3rd note of the triplet with an upstroke. Then as we move on in the B section here, the 3rd phrase of this section is a little bit more challenging because we don't have that repeated material like we did in the A section. So this is all new stuff. Check this out. So just watch out for this motion from 6 on the A string to open A to 6. I find that a little bit challenging, but once you get used to it, it's not too bad. Then we just have a lot of notes that fit with our B flat chord here for the 2nd measure of the phrase. Then for the final turnaround phrase here on the B section, we're messing around with that interval of a 3rd again. We're basically skipping every other note, walking down to B on the A string, playing a nice little turnaround-ish phrase there, and then resolving on the B before doing another pull-off triplet here. But for now, let's see if we can just play through this B section once together with the transcription on screen and those backing tracks again. All right, nicely done. We've tackled both these sections individually. Let's see if we can play them together now, both times through with that backing track and transcription again. A 1, 2, 3, 4. It's already getting dark out there, but I feel like we've just begun. We still have to learn this tune up the neck, but before that, we're going to check out some pull-off and hammer-on triplet exercises that'll make this tune a lot easier, both in the first position and further up. So let me show you this first pull-off triplet exercise. We're just going to take that same pull-off triplet that we had in the A section and sequence it across all the different sets of strings, same frets, so we're not really thinking in the key of B flat anymore. But we're just going to see what it feels like to make that same motion across all 4 sets of strings like that. So you can play all those in time and it would sound something like this. You can repeat it as many times as you want to get this formation and this feeling more cemented in your fingers. So this pull-off exercise number 2 is a... There's Finnegan. He really doesn't like the triplets. Pull-off triplet exercise number 2 is the same idea, but it's using some fingerings that we'll be using for the melody in the version that we're going to learn next up the neck. So check this out. We're starting off with our ring finger on the 9th fret of the D string, pulling off to our middle finger on the 8th fret, and then doing the upstroke on the 7th fret. Then we're going to see what it feels like to do that same motion on the same frets across all the other sets of strings. So starting on the D string, then the G string, then we have the E string, then the A string. So a couple of pull-off triplet exercises for you. Repeat those as many times as you need to get these in your fingers. Let's check out a couple other exercises that use the hammer-on triplet variation now. So back in our first position version of the melody, we had a hammer-on triplet that sounded like this. Hammering on from the 3rd fret to our 5th fret, then back up on the 3rd fret before resolving to the 1st fret. So let's see if we can do that same motion, same frets across all the other strings now. So we have the D string, our G string, skipping up to our E string now, and then to our A string. All together now, it would sound like this. Take your time with these, make sure you're really getting a sustain out of that hammer-on there. And then for this last hammer-on triplet exercise, we're gonna be using some crazy fingerings to do a similar thing up the neck. Here we're hammering on from the 10th fret on our ring finger here on the G string to that 12th fret on our pinky. Which feels awful, right? But again, here in the key of B flat, we have to use our pinky a lot. We're just doubling down today and getting our work done with that 4th finger. So again, see if you can make that 12th fret sustain as much as possible before doing the upstroke on the 10th fret, resolving down to the 8th fret. And then you know the drill, we're gonna take this to those other strings as well. So next would be your E string, then your A string, then your D string, before starting over again. And all together it would sound something like this. And then while we're up the neck here, before we learn this melody, let's see if we can learn a version of the B flat major scale here in this position. So here we're not going to be using any open strings since we're further up the neck. And since we don't have a low root to start on down here like we did in the first position, we're going to have to start on another root. Let's see if we can start with this B flat on our middle finger here on the 8th fret of the D string. Then we're going to walk up this scale one finger at a time on each string until we get to the highest note that we can reach in this position without shifting, which is an E flat here on the 11th fret of the E string. Then back down. Same idea, below the root. And then back up to the root. See if you can try this with me. So now this is our new framework to learn this exact same melody up the neck. We're not going to be shifting at all for this version of the melody, and we're pretty much learning the same version we learned here in the first position, note for note, in this new territory. A 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's scary, I know, but now it's time to actually do this. Let's see if we can learn this together. Here's our first phrase, right? All closed position, no open strings. We're walking up to our root, which is now on our middle finger instead of our index finger, and we're hanging out there for most of this phrase. Our next phrase is a little bit easier. We don't have to use our 4th finger quite as much. But it's a little bit harder at the end there when you're dealing with that interval of a third again. Just watch out for that. Third phrase, same as phrase 1 again, right? Then that turnaround phrase goes something like this. There's our pull off again. Well, take your time here. I know it's kind of weird relearning a melody with some strange new fingerings like this, but when you're ready, let's see if we can play through that A section once together here in this higher position. A 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now the B section is a real beast here up the neck. So let's see if we can tackle this first crazy phrase together. So starting with a few notes prior for a pickup, it sounds like this. There's a lot going on there. So first up, on the notes preceding the downbeat to the B section, there's a lot of stretching going on, right? You have your pinky on the 12th fret of the D string, followed by your middle finger on the 8th fret of the A, and then finally your index on the 6th fret of the E string. That's a lot. Then we have this E flat arpeggio idea. Another big stretch from your index on the 6th fret of the A string now, your middle finger on the 8th fret of the D string, then your pinky on the 12th fret of the G, before landing on your middle finger on that E flat note on the 8th fret. Then we have another one of those pull-off triplets. Before doing that grace note slide, now on your index finger from the 5th fret to the 6th fret of the A string, and then grabbing the 10th fret of the A string with your ring finger. Try that with me really slowly here. The next phrase is a little bit easier, but still pretty hard. Check this out. And we also have that crazy hammer-on triplet with your pinky there at the end of the phrase to watch out for. All right, now check out phrase 3 here. Not too bad. Then a little bit more challenging, here's that turnaround phrase for our B section. Again, we have this thirds idea. And then that pull off triplet to bring it home. All right, now your turn. Let's check out this up the neck version of the B section once through with the transcription and the backing tracks. Well, I'm sure it'll be a challenge here, but let's see if we can play through both A's and both B's together here up the neck and see what happens. A 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, there you go. That's the key of B flat, right? It's as simple as that. And we've covered a lot of ground with this tune already. You know, learning the chords, the chord progression, the melody down here in the first position, the exercises, the scales, the version up the neck. But really, that's only the starting place. And I'd encourage any intermediate or advanced players out there who are learning this tune to take this one to the next level. You know, listen to those versions of the tune by Kenny Baker, Joe Green, Brian Sutton, or anyone else out there. See if you can steal their variations or use it as inspiration to come up with your own melodic variations, or write a solo for this tune, or learn someone else's solo for this tune, or see if you can play this version of the melody up and down the neck using different fingerings if you want to. There's so many different options. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have left in this video lesson, so I'll leave all those next steps up to you and your imagination. But for now, if you like this video, if you learned something, be sure to hit like, hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way to making all these videos possible. And all the support over on Patreon goes a long way too. You can grab the PDF transcription, those MP3 backing tracks, and a bunch of more learning resources over there. And be on the lookout for some more tune video lessons just like this coming at you very soon from this very same space. Until then, happy picking.